I'm ready to slash and burn.
Jason and I were really good buddies from college, and
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I'm always excited to be joined by rookie teams, and this is no exception. So today I have Jordan Neal from DragonSlayer. Excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So DragonSlayer is a robot that, from my understanding, has kind of been some time in the making, which is always exciting because, I mean, you don't want to rush a robot, especially when you're bringing it to BattleBots, because the level of competition just keeps going up and up every year. So that's exciting that you were able to kind of take the time to do that. And I also understand that you've also gotten to kind of receive some mentorship from Jonathan Schultz and Will Bales, who I love both of those guys. So that is also very cool.
Yeah, so Dragon Slayer's been a very long learning curve. You know, the first robot I ever built was a heavyweight called Piranha. I never got to fight it up until Robotica, which was getting on about a month ago now. So 3 years in the garage, that thing sat there. The parts that were in it went into Dragon Slayer, and that was kind of like a year-long process of taking what we have, seeing what we could build around it. You know, a lot of how cheap can we make this thing, basically. That was kind of the whole idea behind it. How cheap can we make it, and can we make it work well? And you know, I'm pleased with how we did. You know, now that the Golden Bolt tournament is out there. That's the end of Dragon Slayer's season for season 6. Ended up 1-3. Not great. Certainly could have hoped to be better, but they threw some of their heaviest hitters at us. So at least I can say whatever everybody thought was coming was probably coming, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk about each of those matches just to get your perspective. I have to say, just regarding the bot itself, like your wedge design is one of the favorite designs for a wedge that I've ever seen. Like, I love that wedge design because I think it's so, like, with being very low to the ground. A lot of the teams use the forks, which, like, I get the forks, they have their purpose, but I mean, to me, that it's just so flat and sleek, and I love it, and I would love to see it work and just help you
Yeah,
in the matches.
it's certainly unique, and it has its merits. You know, there are places where it works really well if we're going up against a bot that maybe isn't using forks or maybe has a little bit of a higher ground clearance. You know, they kind of ride up on it, and that helps us get underneath them, especially if we're using the wedge that has the little curved trusses on it. But as you could tell from the uppercut fight not long ago, that is one of the many places in where it doesn't work well at all, because if someone else gets under it and they hit it with their spinner, it is screwed. I mean, it curled up. You know, it was like a flower blossoming, basically, is what it looked like by the end of that match. It was just trashed by the end of that. You know, so we might have something again a little bit like that, but it's going to be tweaked. Nothing exactly like that again, but it will. You know, keep that design in mind. I understand a lot of people really do like the way it looks, and we'll try to incorporate that at least a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of go back a little bit in time before that uppercut match, and we'll talk about your first fight against Duck.
The one we actually won.
The one you won, I know. I mean, like, I don't think anybody can say that that's an easy win, because Duck is pretty darn near indestructible. I mean, that's, everybody knows that about Duck. That they have a really good robot, and I think that, despite the fact that I understand your weapon wasn't really functioning properly in that match, you did a really good job, essentially breaking the beak on them, and causing some damage, and you won in a judge's decision, which is kind of how you expect to win against Duck. But like, tell me a little bit about that, because I obviously, I'm sure you were really happy with the result of that match.
Yeah, I thought we did very well. As the fight dragged on a little bit, I definitely noticed we weren't getting those, those hits like the first 30 seconds in the match that were going really well. I knew something was really slowing down, and it was probably a culmination of not really knowing how fast the spinner was going beforehand. We had no idea how close we were to like the 250 mile per hour limit. That weapon was probably spinning close to, oh geez, I would say at most 140, 150. And then as the match goes on, it just gets slower and slower. Batteries start dying, motors get hot, there's friction buildup on the side of the weapon uprights and things like that. It wasn't really doing as well as we had expected. So later on in the tournament, we kind of had to improvise. Lots of visits to hobby shops and things, trying to get better equipment and everything, better than what we had brought with us. And trying to get replacements as stuff broke as well, because if you don't bring enough with you, which happens a lot, you either got to make something or you got to go buy something. You really, really don't want to drop out of a fight. That is it's a killer on morale. And I'm lucky we never really had to do that. I would have liked to have kept going. There was after the Uppercut fight, there was I think for teams that were able to, and teams that they actually had time for, there could have been an opportunity to do one more, but by that point it was really, really starting to wear on us. So 4 fights first season, I think that's a good way to cut your teeth. Going up against the hard opponents really makes you, it kind of forces you to learn. Duck was a great way to get introduced to it. Kind of take it easy. I mean, at least compared to our second, third, and fourth.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that, because Minotaur is a different animal.
Yeah, it's a duck. It's a duck and a half, as I said on my first interview.
I mean, they had I believe that you said that before the match that they were scary. I mean, Minotaur is very scary for sure. They, in that match, they managed to get your weapon disabled very quickly. Kind of tell me what was going through your head that match. I mean, obviously, like, it's Minotaur, you kind of hope to win, obviously, but I mean, they're just
you may not expect
robot
to win. Yeah. I mean, beginning of the match, I was definitely not feeling my best. I was extremely nervous. I mean, hell, even before the fight with Duck, I was really nervous. I mean, it was just because I had never done a combat robot fight before in my life. That was my very first introduction to it at BattleBots. I mean, you talk about putting your big boy pants on. That's the way to do it. And in the fight before Minotaur, I got a little boost in confidence having won my first fight, which is great because you can say you're undefeated for a day, and that feels good. And blasting off the beak and everything, I got to keep it actually, and I don't know if I can move away from my camera right now, but I can see it. It's under my bed. I need to put it in a display case like I've been meaning to, but I've got props set up on my table right now to show you, but that one is down there. I'll get it in a minute. But anyway, fight with Minotaur, incredibly nerve-wracking. I expected that to probably be one of the hardest, if not the hardest fights that we would have all season. It would only get harder, of course, which sucked. But we did our best to prepare beforehand, tried to shake off those nerves right before the match started. We kind of made friends with the team. They're a fantastic group of guys. They are really, really awesome. I mean, we became best friends with them overnight after the fight. Actually, before that fight, the night before, we, by complete coincidence, we went to Buffalo Wild Wings on the pretty close to the Strip. I can't remember if it was actually on there or really close to it. And they were there. We had no idea they were going to be there, but the whole team of Minotaur was there. And then Black Dragon was there too. So we sat by the bar. They didn't see us come in. It was me, Justin, and Josh. And I told the bartender, I was like, hey, I want to buy a round of $3 beers for the guys sitting over there at the table. and he had the waitress walk over there and tell them all, and they looked over and they started waving at me. So you see about 20 people waving back at me, Justin and Josh, and it was just great. I think that's a great way to shake off the nerves before a fight, is to become friends, because it's, yeah, there are rivalries out there, but there's never like, you're never mad at anybody, but I prefer to be, friends, to make good friends with every opponent we have, and we did. We still stay friends with all the 4 other teams that we went against, and we kind of made friends with pretty much everybody. But uh I'm rambling now.
No, that's great, because honestly, that's one of my favorite things about BattleBots is, I mean, I don't think in my life that I've ever been involved in a community that everybody is just so like supportive and helpful and like there for each other. It's just great.
Yeah, everybody wants to see everybody else do well, even if you're going up against each other, because this is, it's really more than just competition, because you have, quite literally millions of people watching, and I think that, kind of drives us to do better and to encourage others to do better as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So going from that match, the next match was against Blade. What I found really interesting watching it for a second time is that your season, obviously in a lot of ways really hinged on that match, because you go into that 1-1. You got a really big hit on them initially, but I think where, I saw things kind of change is there was a point where their robot was just kind of spinning around and you went at them, and then that hit is kind of, what caused the match to turn. I mean, I've seen Tombstone, who Blade is often compared to Tombstone. It's, similar in a lot of ways, but I've seen them use that move before. Like Ray has used that move with Tombstone to kind of spin and knock an opponent out that way. In hindsight, looking back at that match, do you still feel that that was what you wanted to do there, or do you think that like it would have been better to hang back when they weren't kind of so violently spinning around?
I have things I would do different about every single match I have ever done. It's something that goes through your mind, immediately after the match ends. You say, what would I have done? Like second by second, I could make this change or I could do that. It's a million different things, but I'll kind of take that fight from the beginning. For that fight, we had beefed up the drive. It was as fast as it was ever going. We put it at 8S. But we learned from the Minotaur fight, where the ESC exploded after that first hit, that we probably shouldn't be running the spinner at 8S as well. So we turned that back down to 6S, same as it was against Duck, right? We did switch the weapon up. It's a lighter weapon that gets up to speed faster, not necessarily more powerful though. But it kind of had an S hook to it, and it was, made to do a little bit better against horizontal spinners, but we weren't necessarily prepared to go against a robot like Blade. I kind of only learned after that there is a, drastically different wedge design you have to use to go against horizontals. The things that I was expecting our wedges to do well against them, it straight up didn't. I mean, they weren't even good for one hit. But as the fight got going and we got that first big hit on them, I think I said to myself, I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I kind of kept going. I really thought it was going to go our way after that, but it didn't. Because after they kind of settled again, after flying up and coming back on the arena floor, they spun around and hit us again, and then the weapon just stopped again. And in your mind, when that happens, you want to know why, but you just can't. You can never ever figure it out. You just gotta, you got to throw that out and you got to keep moving, and sometimes you panic. I think I might have kind of panicked in that scenario, because I thought, oh no, our robot's going in the garbage now, because I don't have a way to defend against this robot, one of the most powerful robots in the competition. But then from there, they do that little bait and hook thing where they spin, and that increases the kinetic energy transfer. And I really tried to find an opening as they were spinning to I maybe get into the back of them and push them, but I knew it wasn't going to save me from that spinner. And then sure enough, that spinner comes around, it goes through the chassis, gets behind the wedge, rips it off of the weld, and throws it across the arena, right? It probably flew about 20 feet. And when that happened, it actually pulled and ripped out the drive receiver. So that is what caused the robot to just stop right there. And it must have cut power as well, because, or not necessarily, because the light that we have in the back, I don't know if you noticed in that fight, one of the lights turns off that shines in the back of the robot. That's what shows that there's no power going to the receiver. The light pretty much just came out with it. It stayed in the robot remarkably, but we found it like just ripped apart on the inside, just floating in there, not connected to anything. But that's what stopped the robot. We could have kept going if that didn't happen, but I don't know if I would have wanted to, because the entire left side of a robot was like open and anything could have fallen out. So I'm kind of glad it stopped where it did.
Yeah, sometimes that is best.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta say, oh, hell no, take it. Just take the win.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that it's tough, because that definitely could have gone either way. Didn't go your way, but you kind of got a second crack going into the champions tournament. Of course, of all things, like you said, with your luck and the opponents and things like that, you
I had
get
the worst
Uppercut.
luck, man. I had the hardest. I'll go on record right now. I got the hardest schedule of anybody, especially for a new team, right? I think most of the newbies got at least like 2 control bots for the preliminary. We did not.
Yeah, you definitely got some difficult ones.
Yep.
Now the Uppercut match was interesting to me, because they decided to, pull out this secret heavier weapon for that match that they had not used before. To your credit, like, you were very aggressive and you just went right at them. You didn't have any fear. The thing that I found interesting though about that is, because to me, even though they're obviously different weapons, but the design is similar in some ways, Uppercut, at least in some ways, reminds me of Deep Six. And when I was looking, back at that match between Deep Six and Ribot, kind of hung back a lot and kind of just was patient and picked their spot. I don't know, whether a strategy like that changes anything, or if, it was going to go the way that it would have gone either way.
it it's always easy to strategize beforehand, but what I say is the first thing to break in any BattleBots match is the plan, and that's kind of what happened there. I was still not really used to being in that kind of environment, and I think that's what kind of ruined any plan I had. I really thought that we had the reach with our spinner to hit kind of that cage that surrounds their spinner. I was aiming for that, maybe trying to get on the side of the chassis, because looking at it from the front, it's a T-shaped robot. If you can worm around, you can hit the chassis and hit the wheel, right? But even with as much reach as we have, I've heard someone describe DragonSlayer as having a disjointed hitbox. We weren't able to hit it, and I think it was because of the wedges. Now, those wedges that we had were actually longer than any of the other ones that we had used before, because those other wedges we have, they had broken, right? Minotaur messed up the curve set, and then Blade really screwed up one of the ones with the straight set, right? So we didn't have a matching set. We had like one good one, and then we had our backups. So the backups are what we ended up using against Uppercut. Those were not AR 500 like the others. They were 1018. They were mild steel. They had not been heat treated. They were made super, super early on in Dragon Slayer's development, before we were accepted for the show, just to, get it driving to see if it can handle the kind of like drag that we were putting on it. And they, you know, they still were great in this fight. They're a lot heavier. They're 3/8 thick instead of half inch, excuse me, quarter inch like all the others. We thought maybe that would give us a little bit better chance, but no, they were annihilated. And so I think during the whole match, we only got like one real significant hit on their chassis. There was a teeny tiny hole, I think, in the chassis on either side, kind of halfway between the wheel and kind of the core of it. You know, we oh, I can actually show it to you. We got to keep
Oh,
one of these, one of the balancing beams, right? There's where we hit it, right
okay.
there. You can just barely see. And then the other one, I think it just kind of fell off like after we, you know, ran into them, kind of went flying. But, you know, we basically heavily damaged two balancing bars, which, you know, I think that's kind of cool. Didn't do much else, but we did get to see after the weapon to weapon contact when we met with them after the match that our weapon, it kind of dug into theirs more than theirs did to ours. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, the S7 blade of ours did really good against their AR 500. So that, you know, that's learning right there. I think we'll stick with the S7 then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to stick with what works. So speaking of that, you know, let's kind of talk about now that that's all kind of concluded for you. What is next for Dragon Slayer?
So for Dragon Slayer, one thing we really want to do, and this is really exciting because this is the event that really kind of got me into doing this. This is what I built Piranha for. Uh, was not done in time for the 2018 event, and then 2019 didn't happen. But for this year, 2023, Robo Games is back, and so now there is one other place to fight these 250-pound full combat robots, right? And we are signed up. We've got plenty of build time. It's about 8 months away now, so for that event, I think you can expect to see a Dragon Slayer version 2 that, fingers crossed, will be much better, you know, much better. It's going to look better. It's going to drive better. And I think it's going to be a chance for us to really show what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is I think it takes sometimes dipping your toe in and figuring out, you know, what you can improve and things like that, to then go into the next year. Because I think there's very few rookie bots that come out and just annihilate. You know, obviously, so far for this year, like with champions in the last year, Glitch is definitely an exception, with what they've been able to do, but most rookie bots just don't do that because it does take time to learn and figure things out and adjust to make sure that it's the way that you want it to be.
Oh yeah, Glitch and Riptide both, and then Blip as well. I won't forget them. You know, three robots of the 10 newbies. I think that just they were fantastic. And you know, but none of those were without their problems too. You know, it's a learning curve with everybody for every new bot because there's no way to really take a bot this size and really test it. You can drive it at your workshop or drive it at your house or whatever, but until you get in to an actual fight with it, you're not going to know, and you're not going to be able to figure out all those problems, right? So it really takes time.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Now I've asked this question to some of the newer, you know, builders or you know that have newer bots because I'm just curious because you haven't had that many fights to this point. There's plenty of robots that you haven't fought. Of those robots, is there any matchup that you were like, I really would love to do
Oh yeah,
this?
yeah. So this, you basically this question is answered for me. I'm gonna have to say Black Dragon just because the theming of it matches up so well. I have screenshots about 30, 40 people on social media and on my DMs and stuff asking me, "Are you gonna fight Black Dragon or do you want to?" And I'm like, "Of course I do." You know, it's the perfect matchup. It just works so well. But besides Black Dragon, you know, some other bots I really like to take a crack at would be Yeti is, has been, on BattleBots for a very long time. It's one of my favorite robots. I think it's very unique. I think Yeti versus DragonSlayer will be, a really cool matchup. Who else? Who else? I would like to take a crack at another horizontal spinner again once we get that wedge design figured out. Because, I feel stupid for not knowing, or well, for not bringing one. We had kind of planned on one, but we ran out of time, ran out of, money, I guess. But of all the horizontal spinners, I think that we would like to have a matchup against, I probably maybe Valkyrie. A Valkyrie is a bit like a knight, in a way. So two great warriors going at it. I think a Dragon Slayer versus Valkyrie would be a very entertaining fight. And let's see, I'll pick one more. I want another go at Minotaur. I really think we could take him if we got one more chance. I want that rematch so bad.
Hey, you never know. It could happen. And I'm going to throw this in there just because because of the fact that I love the wedge design, and I think that something like that could be effective. I'd really like to see you against Hydra.
Yeah, I could take Jake. I could do it easy, no problem. You could slay a dragon, you can slay a Hydra. I can do it.
I would love to see that, just because so many robots have a very difficult time getting under Hydra. And I think with a wedge like that, you could.
Maybe sometimes you have to ignore the ground game altogether, and you just got to stick your weapon out there and, get as many licks in as you can, make it easy on yourself. I'm sure you've noticed bots get stuck together
Oh yeah.
like this when you try to play that ground game a little too hard. Sometimes you just have to ignore that altogether, but yeah, I could take them.
Hey, I hope that he's watching. I'm gonna tag him whenever I post this. I'm gonna tag him. Yeah, because I like, it would be fun. I think it would be a lot of fun.
I think it'll be an excellent match, and I hope he does get to launch me up 10 feet into the air one time. I want to see this Dragon Slayer fly.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe he'll be at Robo Games. I would love to fight him there.
Maybe that would be pretty cool. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, obviously there's a lot going on. With the addition of Robo Games, that just adds a whole other element. And now it makes fans like me try and decide, okay, which thing am I going to go to?
Exactly. Luckily, Robo Games is in April, so you shouldn't have anything around that robot related that you're gonna miss.
Probably not. Good timing on the part of the big events and things like that. So yeah. But that is the questions that I had. So I totally appreciate you coming on the show. Like, this was great. I love getting to hear about the newer bots and kind of get some different perspective there. So I hope that we see much more from DragonSlayer. And yeah, did you have anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about Robotica a little bit. I got
Sure.
to,
Yeah.
do my first fight with Piranha, which was amazing. It didn't go perfectly. We couldn't. It came there, like a puzzle in a box. It needed to be put together to get there right. Luckily, it is easy to assemble, but there was a lot of duct tape and Velcro and hopes and dreams inside of that robot holding it together. But I was very happy, at least, that it drove fantastically. It was very fast. Since we didn't get the spinner going because during testing, the spinner battery, which is separate from the drive, we run the drive at 8S, we run the spinner at 6. During testing, when we were kind of spinning around doing our it's a safety test, they call it the I know exactly what it's called. Why am I forgetting now? It's a test to see that if your robot loses connection between the transmitter and the receiver, it will stop and not keep going. But for that, you have to spin around in a circle. And what happened was our spinner battery came loose. It like shot out of the robot and it got cut open on something. So we could not use that battery and we had to throw it into a big garbage can full of sand, where all the other dead batteries go to die, you know? So we ran the drive only. We turned it into a thwack bot where, that's where we drive into our opponent, slam into them, and then we spin around in a circle as fast as we can, give them a good whack. Piranha has a waggly tail on a door hinge on the back of it. So we got a few good slaps in. That was really fun. And then besides Piranha, I'm getting a phone call. What's that? First place featherweight division? Hell yeah. Thanks for reminding me. That was fantastic. We did that with a scaled down half-size version of DragonSlayer that's called Squire, which I have here on my desk. There it is. It's naked though. It doesn't have any lids or armor on it. So but yeah, that was really great. We did our first match on the first day with Squire, and then Piranha got to fight on the second day because we were still getting it together. But our first match with Squire was really nerve-wracking. We went up against one of the Mad Catter team members robots called Toe Biter. It's like a 15-pound horizontal undercutter. And then Jeremy Garmita, who is actually from Team Uppercut, his robot Sunset, they had put them together as a 30-pound multi-bot called Team Rocket. And I was really, really worried about that robot. It was the only other in the 30-pound division with a spinner, right? And that being our first fight and us not having many spares, I was really worried. I thought it was going to be, a real tough match. And it was, because, we got, plenty of good licks from Sunset. I think Toe Biter was having some issues spinning their weapon up, but those two robots are both fast. Squire was really slow, and we were struggling with, some ground game issues. The way that Squire is, it scaled down DragonSlayer, but it's a little bit longer in the width from front to back. So it's a lot more front heavy than we were expecting. Also, all the motors, or the motor for the spinner is in front of rather than directly in line with the wheels like DragonSlayer. So it being front heavy, it had a little bit of trouble moving around. The floor was, the panels in the floor were a little bit like this, like a wave. So you're kind of having to be real careful to only go at in one direction so you don't get stuck, because Squire has super low ground clearance. But that fight ended up going really well. We got a lot of really, really good hits in. We ended up winning the fight by tap out about halfway through. Second fight was against a robot called Amplifier. It is a car amplifier with wheels and a wedge. We were expecting an easy win from that one, but it wasn't so. The spinner was actually having issues. It wasn't it wasn't getting up to speed. It was cogging at first. It finally got going. One big ol' hit flipped him on his head, and he could barely move. But then right as that happened, we got stuck too. So it ended up being a simultaneous knockout, and we squeaked out, with a judge's decision. Also, the feathers that we have on DragonSlayer, we have them on Squire as well. They got sucked into the weapon and basically destroyed our weapon belt. So that was an embarrassing repair we had to make. And then the third match that would give us our final 3-0 undefeated record was against a robot called Stuber, which is a bot that Charles Guan actually built, I believe, several years ago. Basically, the driver told me, hey, if you can get your robot spinning, we're going to go ahead and forfeit. We got it spinning, and that was that. He really didn't want to lose that robot. So 3-0, first place. I mean, what a way to bounce back from, losing at BattleBots pretty badly. That was fantastic, because we hadn't had a big event like that, between the two. Me and Justin actually did take a couple of small beetle weights to a competition in Houston, which was a really fun event too. I finished that one out 1-1. He was 2-2. We both had a great time, so since BattleBots, we've been having a lot of fun. It's just, you can take it slow, pick which events you want to go to when you're ready, rather than, fighting a deadline. And that's, one of the best things about it. And we plan to take Squire again to Robot Ruckus in November. And that's going to be an interesting event because that will be the first time I take a robot to an event a second time. Up until now, I've got a new one for every event I had to go to. So it's like everything I learned, I kind of have to throw it out the window and focus on this new thing, and I'm kind of getting tired of that. So it's like, okay, let's pick a robot. Let's focus on it. Let's get really, really good at this, From there, I'd love to do NHRL. I'm sure you've probably watched an NHRL live stream or two. That is, to BattleBots, to me, that's the next best thing. That is going to be a lot of fun, I think. With the experience we get from Ruckus, I think the Squire is just going to get better and better. And who knows? Maybe we'll have another robot we take to us to enter into with in the 12-pound or 3-pound class. It depends. It could be anything.
Yeah, and I love to talk about all of those other events because, obviously, as everybody knows, the podcast focuses quite a bit on BattleBots, but I love talking about these other events because, I mean, even as a fan for a long time, I didn't really know that there was anything else out there. And, now after becoming aware of that, it's just fascinating. I mean, if you haven't seen an NHRL live stream, I highly encourage watching because it is so much more fun than you could ever imagine that it is. So for anybody watching the show, definitely check those things out as well.
Yeah, NHRL is like a party with a robot combat event, like over there. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I know the guys from Behind the Bots, which are also another podcast that are involved with NHRL, they do a great job with that. I mean, it's just
I've been on their podcast. It was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that is awesome to hear. I love to hear about those other events because again, there's fans from all over the country, and so depending on where you're located. I unfortunately am in the Midwest and there is just nothing here.
Nothing.
So gotta travel.
Hey, so if you did want to go to an event out there, maybe less competition. That's one way to think about it.
Hey, baby. But yeah, so excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. For fans that are watching, as I always make sure that I say, please like, subscribe, all of those good things. I have a merch store now. That's really cool. And just so that people know, if I sell anything, I don't expect to, but if I do, 100% of whatever I sell is going back into combat robotics. So good incentive to purchase stuff from there. Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan. And we'll definitely see everyone next time on the show.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.